Scream 7 has just hit theaters, and you might be looking at those reviews out there and going, should I even bother going to this? Well, we'll give you that answer to that and more. This is a spoiler-heavy review. We'll get to those spoilers. We'll warn you before they come. But this is Killer Cuts. I'm Bobby Munson. Sat beside me, it's Astrid Pizarro. Astrid, how are you doing today?
I'm still processing this. How are you?
Well, I mean, we were talking before we hit record, so yes, processing at its very finest. I think we're both really curious to see where this landed in our rankings. We'll get to the rankings before the end of the show. Very negative reviews coming out of this one, though, like the lowest rated Scream movie review wise. And seeing that come through, I'm sort of not surprised. I mean, I'm surprised we went 7 movies in the franchise before getting one that hit this low to begin with. I mean, that's very rare for a horror series. I think a lot of people are forgetting that Scream 3 was also very pandered by the critics. That one does have a very low rating and not very much above this one. We'll let you know where that ranks now here for us in the scope of it before the end here. But let's talk about the positives, the negatives. We'll pick it apart, talk about the movie. Again, warning to anybody who hasn't seen it, if you really do want to keep this secret for yourself, we will talk about the reveals later on, but we are going to talk about the scenes as well too. Not to say that that's going to give away a lot, because man, that trailer, it really does give away a lot of stuff in this movie, quite a bit of stuff in this movie. We start off with a scene where a young couple is going out to the Macher house in Woodsboro, which has now been turned into an Airbnb, an homage to the Stab films along the way, and also to the original Killings. I thought this was cool. I mean, it was all set up in a neat way that I was kind of like, yeah, man, I'd like to almost stay there myself. It seems like a lot of fun. I thought that the animatronic Ghostface had a little bit of a cool jump scare there when it first showed up, and I thought that the young lady in the scene screaming for her life and running to the door, and as she kind of hits the door and her boyfriend happens to be walking in at that exact time, kind of almost reminiscent of when Sydney in the first one's running out the front door from the Ghostface attack in her house, and then that's when Dewey happens to be there with the mask at the front there. Kind of had that sort of vibe. A lot of nostalgia in this movie, so we're going to have a lot of those scenes. But the two of them are there. They get a call. The first call is kind of part of the whole Stu Macher house experience. They get do you like scary movies? They get to play a little game. There's a trick question at the end of it. Very cute. What I did really like about this opening scene is very different from other ones in the series. I thought it was very interesting. Whether or not it was necessary or even really had an effect on the rest of the movie, kind of up to debate. I know we were talking a little bit about that, but I did like the way it was put together. I like the aesthetic of it. Yeah, it's a little silly that suddenly Ghostface moves an animatronic Ghostface to some other room in a short period of time without being heard, and then stands there and has them believing he's animatronic before going ahead and brutally stabbing the boyfriend in this thing, like with those shots to the head like he did. I thought that was absolutely grotesque, but such a nice touch. And then of course the scene we've all seen in the trailer with his girlfriend running up the stairs, the fight with Ghostface, and then the turnaround landing on the knife. So a lot of it, again, because we had seen the trailer so much and so much of this was revealed there, it didn't maybe have the same impact as it could, but still a very cool and different way to open up a Scream film.
Yeah, I definitely like how different it was from the other Scream movies. I was disappointed that the boyfriend, being a horror fan, got killed so easily and first before the girlfriend did. I did like the fact that he's such a horror fan. I love how he's looking at everything. It's like, oh, this is where this happened. This is where that happened. This is where that happened. Oh, that's so cool. I'm like, that would have been me if I was there. So I feel like I connected with him in that sort of way. I feel like the visual of the house burning down, though, I feel like that's something that was very, like, either when I saw it on the trailer to watch it in person was something that was completely different. It just felt like you're like burning away like my nostalgia from this movie because of the house being burnt down at the same time. I did like the animatronic. I thought that was really cool. I was waiting for that moment when it actually wasn't animatronic, and he's like, "Wait, it moved differently this time." I was like, I was waiting for that the whole time. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I did like this scene particularly, and they did in another scene later, which we'll talk about. But there was a one point that even though it was the boyfriend, I like how they did it because the girlfriend's looking at the animatronic, but we see the Ghostface mask kind of glowing in the background at one point. before he like attacks her, even though it's the boyfriend. But I thought it was really cool that they did something like this, because they're like, oh, you can see him from the background if you look for that 1 second there. If not, you miss it. And it reminded me of Hard Eyes with the mask, that you can see like the mask glowing in the dark that way. And I feel like we
Yeah.
never seen anything like that with like Ghostface. So like, it's there, but I just don't, you just might miss it if you don't see it at that moment. So I thought that was pretty cool. We see that visual coming up a little bit later on too, which I thought was pretty interesting, because we hadn't seen a scene kind of like that of like being able to see him without seeing the rest of Ghostface.
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool effect too. Like right away I could see, like, as I'm watching this in the theater and I see that mask, I'm like, okay, clever. But I was also like, so the boyfriend. Like, I was like, if they do his death off scene and that's the legitimate Ghostface, I'm going to be so angry. But no, and then I thought it was great that she just socks him right in the face and busts him up pretty good. Like, she got a really good shot in there. She actually did a good job fighting off Ghostface in this scene too. It's just, unfortunate the way it ended up for her. But yeah, it's a nice touch. But you're right, like the whole burning it down, getting rid of it. And the argument I'll make is that it kind of almost set it up where it's like they wanted to do it to make people think that something was going to happen in Woodsboro again, almost to take the distraction away from where the attacks were going to go. It's a little far-fetched, granted. And we also, I mean, there's a lot that we could sit there and debate over this opening scene, but it definitely didn't play as heavily. The effects of it didn't play as heavily into the full movie as what, say, other opening scenes have done in previous Scream movies.
Yeah, I'll say that part about the house burning down made me think of more like the ending and the reveal at the end, which I was hoping it would connect back to the house, which I'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about the reveal. So I was hoping it would connect back to that and the like motivation behind and the motive here. So when it did it, I was a little bit disappointed. That's why I didn't. It went down a little bit on my ranking because of that. So I was starting with a 10 and it went down to a 9 because of that, and that's why it went down a little bit more. But that's one of the reasons why, because I was hoping it would connect more at the end. I'm the kind of person that I like in my Scream movies how everything connects back somehow at the ending with the reveal somehow, and that was the part that I didn't like, how there was no connection to that. I just felt like we'll just burn it off, because that way we can just do the movie outside of like the Stu Macher house, kind of territory, if that makes sense. And I understand wanting to change scenarios and wanting to change like the background and things like that, and overall changing the location. But I don't think it was necessary to burn down the house in that aspect if it had no connection to what happened later.
No, and that's a very fair assessment. I've heard that argument from other people as well too, and I agree. I mean, if there was no real reason for going after the Macher home other than a distraction from what was to come, then it really becomes irrelevant to the larger plot kind of thing. And that time could have been used to fill in better for some of what we're going to see next, which was the introduction to some of the newer characters to this movie. So, of course, we got our nostalgic character, or at least our OG nostalgic character back, Sidney Prescott, now Sidney Evans, married to local police officer Mark Evans. Oh my goodness. Hey, like I'll first say I like Mark. I thought Joel McHale as Mark was good. He was sympathetic. He was a nice guy. You kind of want to see that for Sidney, but I know as Scream fans, we're all thinking to ourselves, come on, please. Like, is it just that she's got a thing for marks that are in law enforcement, or how does this work? Right? Like, we wanted Mark Kincaid, we wanted McDreamy back in this thing. We didn't get him, so they tried to fill in the gap because his name had been mentioned in Scream 5, so we had to make the assumption. They did address Sydney's twins, which were brought up in Scream 5 as she was pushing them in a stroller, are away with Mark's mom at the time, so they are out of town. Okay, we've established that. So then we get introduced to Tatum, and not Tatum Riley, but Tatum Evans, the daughter of Sydney and Mark, and she's at that age. She's 17. She's rebellious, but she also wants to know more about her mom's life. All she knows about her mom's previous life is everything she's seen in movies or read in books and heard on all these documentaries. And again, Sydney doesn't necessarily want to talk about it, and maybe these things have, over time, not exactly, they've been embellished a little bit. How Hollywood likes to take a true story and add to it for the flair of selling movie tickets, right? So that's kind of like the what they're kind of going at in this whole scene, especially at the opening, is Sydney doesn't want to talk about it, but her daughter wants to know more. She, and then we get into the nostalgia of her finding Sydney's old jacket from Windsor College. I got to say, a lot of references to the Windsor College portion for a movie that is focusing on the 30 years since the original killings kind of thing. I always thought that was kind of interesting to keep making the focus on what happened at Windsor more so than focus on that OG type thing. In this time, we're also introduced to other new characters such as Chloe and Hannah, which are the friends of Tatum, both of which so happen to be played by two of the newer Ghostbusters cast, both McKenna Grace and Celeste O'Connor. So I thought that was a cool little touch. The boyfriend, I can't remember what her Tatum's boyfriend's name is,
Ben.
and he does Ben, there we go. Sneaks through the window. They recreate the scene from Scream 1. They do that whole thing, and he even does the whole Stab was on TV. They and you could tell he's playing it up to be like, because he's seen it done in the movie, so he's playing it up like he's in the movie sort of situation. So there's him. There's also the creepy neighbor kid, Lucas, the son of Jessica, who we know is played by Anna Camp. So these are some of the collectively new characters we're introduced to at first before we get to the scene we'll talk about in a bit where we get to the school portion of it. So this is basically the establishing of that mother-daughter relationship that we get with Sydney and Tatum. And I found that was one of the more endearing parts of the entire movie. I thought that Tatum was a great character addition to this. I think that Isabel May did fantastic playing the role. I think that her scenes with her and Sydney were great. And if this is hopefully maybe sort of a way to pass the torch, I hope that they could continue to establish her as a main figure within the Scream franchise and allow eventually room to maybe get to the point where we don't need and we always need those OG characters to a degree because we love them, but we also want to get to that point where we can find new characters to love too.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the part you mentioned about the characters. Is one thing I didn't like about particularly about the characters is like, aside from the boyfriend, because we hear his name quite often coming from Sydney's mouth, aside from him, I feel like for the other ones, we barely hear their names. And I feel like we don't get to know them like we usually do. And I feel like it doesn't help when it comes to like you making connections with the new characters. It just feels like kind of like, oh, they're expendable because they're going to die anyway. So it's like, why not we're not going to give you a background story on them because they're going to die soon anyway. So might as well not waste our time sort of thing. So that's how it felt mostly with the characters here, because a lot of them, they mention things in passing about them, but there's not much of a story to them. I did like the callback of him crawling through the window and doing the whole quote, the same thing that Billy did with Sydney, and even having the same song in the background, and when he falls hiding from Sydney, and Sydney's already like outsmarted him. She knows he's been there because she's been through this before. She's done this before too. It's like I was 17 at one point. I did this with my boyfriend too. So I like that kind of callback with Tatum. Joe McHale, I liked it more than I thought I would because I like how they portrayed him. I like the fact that because she's married to him, she is Evans, like her mom's maiden name. So it's now she's Sydney Evans and my mom's Maureen Evans. So I thought that was a nice little touch as well. I obviously love the fact that her daughter's name is Tatum after Tatum too. So I thought that was pretty cool to watch. So yeah, I feel like more for the new characters, it didn't feel kind of like they did with like Chad and Mindy and like those kind of characters that they give a little bit more a connection to the past and a background story to them. I just feel like I wish it would have done a little bit more of these characters so I could care about them when they die. It was more like, oh, they died, and like I like the death scenes because they were pretty different this time. But at the same time, it's like I didn't feel sad because they died because there was no connection to them either.
Yeah, became one of those. I was rooting for Ghostface in those scenes more than I ever was before, and no fault to the people playing them. I think that just a lackluster development in the terms of these characters. They had no intention for them to go on or move on, so therefore they just had them all knocked off in a very short period of time. In fact, but we ended up going to this. First of all, we established things over at the school. There's a play that's going to be happening. Tatum and all her friends are involved with it. The main actress in it, of course, is Hannah. She's going to be doing this scene where she's rocking back and forth on a pulley system to look like she's floating across the stage and everything. So of course we've seen in the trailer, they've kind of given a little bit of this away already with one of the shots within it. Again, that trailer terribly gave a lot away about this movie. I mean, between being able to pick apart where this was going from the trailer and then the things people were saying about it going in, it was just so easy. And like eventually you get to the point where it's just like when nobody left, you kind of can just predict who the reveal is going to be at that point too. So, but in this process, we do get one of the coolest kills of maybe the entire franchise. Definitely one of the most violent kills of the franchise. But before that, Sydney's at her coffee shop. She now owns a coffee shop in Pine Grove, and she gets that very first call coming, like we see in the trailer, coming from Woodsboro. And she picks it up, and of course, it's Ghostface. The typical "Hello, Sydney. Did you miss me?" kind of situation. The conversation is going like a standard one, and then Ghostface mentions her daughter, and then Sydney turns around and goes, "Yo, you seem to know a lot about me for another person hiding behind a fake mask and a fake voice changer." And all of a sudden that voice turns around and goes, "I'm not hiding this time, Sydney," or "I'm not hiding, Sydney, not this time." And it turns to a FaceTime call all of a sudden. And this is where the use of AI came in. And I will say that I thought the use of it was interesting, but it does get taken too far in this movie. And we'll talk about that when we get towards the end. I thought that the way they started it off was beautifully done. This is where we get introduced to the return of Stu Macher, something that I've been so highly against in this series. Every time someone's brought up Stu's alive, I'm like, you guys are crazy. There is no way Stu's alive. I'm not buying into it. And the way they did it here, I was like, okay, I still don't for a second believe he's alive, but I can see that they put these elements in, enough elements of a doubt because of everything that's happened. You wouldn't have time to go attend funerals and make sure if it was an open casket that you saw Stu in a casket getting lowered into a grave. You have to go based on assumption. And this is now 30 years later. And they do mention that there was missing logs at the mortuary to prove that Stu Macher's body was ever put there. So this Ghostface has thought things through very, very cleverly in order to really put some doubt in Sydney's mind. And so this AI phone call comes in of Stu, and he goes on, and kudos to Matthew Lillard for still having it, because he pulls off crazy just perfectly in this thing. And they did a great job with the makeup of having his face all mangled like it would have been, all scarred up from the TV smashing on his face. And the fact that he turns around right then and says, "Yeah, your daughter is real pretty. In fact," he goes, "I'm outside of her school right now." And as the phone turns towards the school, and he goes, "I think it's showtime," or whatever, and hangs up the phone. I thought, oh my God, like whoever this killer is like just not afraid to say where they are and what they're planning to do. And there was no tricks to it at all. This Ghostface was going all in on going at the school right then and there. And that was the big plan. I do like the fact that immediately, without hesitation, Sydney calls Mark to say, "Get to the school. There's a killer and they're going to go after Tatum." And I like even more that Mark was written as a character that doesn't question, "Oh no, you're crazy. That couldn't possibly happen. It's been 30 years. Leave it alone." Like we see in so many movies, Mark was like, no, he drops the phone and he dispatches all the rest of the police, all available units to the school immediately, kind of thing. He doesn't doubt for a second that Sydney would make this kind of stuff up. And they get there. I will say it was kind of like, so we get the death scene of Hannah where she's in that pulley scene and Ghostface has a knife and slices right across the stomach. The guts come flying out. One of the coolest death scenes. But then Ghostface is standing there when Sydney shows up. And come on, you cannot tell me that the way we've seen Sydney handle a gun over the last 5 movies that she's been a part of, that she misses this Ghostface this many times. Even if she would have hit him in the body or somewhere where it's like, yeah, okay, he could have had a vest and he goes on and they don't catch him. Fine. But Sidney Prescott misses like 6 shots in a row, which was a little bit wonky, I thought. But a very interesting scene, because now we're laying the grounds for everybody conveniently got separated during this time. So everybody's now a suspect. We now can start looking at, the teacher that was there that we were introduced to. We can look at each of the friends because they were separated, including the boyfriend who they wanted to put a lot on Ben. Ben, he could definitely be a bad guy, right? Don't trust the boyfriend. We've seen it now twice in this series that the boyfriend can't be trusted. But I was like, there's no way they're going to the boyfriend angle. Like, if they go with the boyfriend angle, I'll check out of this series at this point. So I knew Ben couldn't be part of it, even when they got to the point of him and his computer later on, and the fact that he's like everything lined up too easy, almost like Ben was like given he was almost marked as a fall guy by the eventual Ghostface. But yeah, this was an interesting scene. The death scene definitely is the standout of it. And now we've got an established Ghostface attack in Woodsboro. And we want to see where we go from there. But yeah, turn it over to you.
Yeah, I like the part here with the rehearsal because like you said, we already have a part that Tatum is wearing Sydney's jacket from Scream, and she'll say something like, "Oh, I haven't seen that since college." And I like the fact that we continue on this trend about going back to college because when the rehearsal happens and she messes up, then her teacher is like, "Oh, you're the daughter of Sydney Prescott. Like your mom has has callbacks to theater, so you should be able to do this." And it's like disappointing because you're her daughter. So I like that callback back to like again Winston College again because that's when we saw Sydney really becoming involved with theater more than any other movie. Um, I think the call was really interesting. I like how Sydney's already ready with the recording thing too. I like recording the whole phone call for herself and keeping that record of it. And like we see, like you said, the call already says it's from Woodsboro. I like how you could say it's like how Mark is ready to go. It's like when she's like, "Oh, something's happening at the school." I like how they make all her friends look like suspects, but like you said, it was like once I'm going through the list of everybody that was there from her friends, the guy that was doing the hardest, Aaron, got killed. Hannah got killed in that same scene. And then they like to point out a lot towards the boyfriend. That's when I told my sister and my boyfriend's like, it's definitely not the boyfriend because it's too obvious. If we ought to have it happen twice, it's definitely not him. You can take him off your list. There's no point in having the boyfriend again. So it's like I already checked him off a list from the beginning. I feel like they made him try to look almost like a Billy, and they at one point that's what Chad calls him, the Gen Z Billy is what he calls him. So I was like, yeah, it's definitely not him. It's too like they're making it too clear, like point fingers towards him, and I just automatically took him off my list because of that. This is the part where I feel like it went kind of quick and I kind of missed it here. But this is the part when Jessica's talking to Sydney in the coffee shop. But while Sydney's helping the coffee shop, she things very quickly happen. And it's like there's a guy that I don't know if she gives him an order, what happens, but she looks at him in the counter. They have like a stare down for a moment. And he looks at her very weirdly before he leaves, and she's like weirded out, and they put that kind of music that's like very tense music in the background too. So like kind of like pay attention to this. And then we had that moment with like Lucas is talking about the documentaries too because he's another horror fan and he knows about everything that happens with the stab movies and Sydney's story. And Jessica, the mom, is like, "Hey, did he talk about it again?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine." She's like, "Oh no, I don't want him to be talking about that with you," sort of thing. So that's what made me think about it. I was like, okay, that's interesting, but it feels kind of obvious, kind of in the same at the same time, like the boyfriend sort of thing by pointing at the person that knows about the stab movies and the Sydney story. So that's why I had him on my maybe list and that for the suspect part of it. But I like the fact that Sydney was more open. We had seen Sydney with her jobs like before, like in Scream 3, being like hidden in a way while she was working. And I like the fact that this time around she's working out in the open. She's made a whole business to herself. And there's a lot of people at the coffee shop, so you see how open it is to the whole town there too. I like that small town feel too. I feel like it goes back to like how Woodsboro looks in the first couple movies and the setup there, especially when the curfew things happens. I love how it looks there. Like that location there was really well done.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then, yeah, from here, it gets even more interesting because we go back to Sydney and Mark's place. They're planning to flee town. That's it. It's time to run. They're getting Tatum to pack her. Well, no, she's supposed to have a go bag ready to go, but she unpacked it years ago, apparently, because she's rebellious and doesn't want to think that any of this could ever happen to her. So in this time, as this is happening, suddenly lights are getting flickered off. We see the hatch to the attic all of a sudden open up and Ghostface drops down like we saw in the trailers. This was a very interesting scene too. Mark gets in there, fights with Ghostface quite a lot. He ends up getting thrown down the stairs, gets knocked out. Sydney and Tatum go to a panic room where I almost thought like you could have just stayed in the panic room, but then there's like an extra door to the panic room that leads to a crawl space between the walls. And I'm like, I know that the explanation is we need to get to your dad, but I was just like, Mark seems like a pretty tough guy. I'd imagine like that fall wouldn't take him out completely. Like it's not like he had been stabbed 50 times yet before this scene had happened. So I was like, you know, ladies, maybe you should just sit this one out, like grab a
Mm-hmm.
glass of water and just chill in the panic room for a while. Maybe this will just blow over. But no, they, to create suspense and tension and everything, they do the crawl space scene, which we've seen in the trailer with Ghostface trying to chop through the wall with the knife. And Sydney does get nicked in the elbow there by, I think it's a fire poker for a fireplace
Mm-hmm.
at one point in time.
Yeah.
They end up getting out of there. Ghostface and Mark are tussling in the front yard at this point, and then Ghostface stands up in the middle of the road and boom, hit by a car. And I was like, oh yeah, I was like, I know who this is going to be because I had heard something about this being a possibility. And Gail, and of course, the Meeks Martin twins come popping on out, and I'm like, okay, let's have some fun with this. I thought that they added a little bit more the humorous side to the movie, the
Mm-hmm.
three of them especially.
Yeah.
I'll say right now, I think this was one of Gail's better movies that she's been a part of
Mm-hmm.
lately. Like, I thought that her roles in 5 and 6 kind of just made me dislike Gail even more. And then this one, I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't dislike Gail. Like, I know I was almost like rooting for her demise in 6, and yet in this time around, I was like, yeah, we can keep Gail around a little longer. um, so they run over this first Ghostface. Ghostface gets unmasked. It's the guy from the coffee shop. His name's Carl. He's an escaped psych ward individual. So they're like, all's good, right? We got Ghostface already, yay! But Sydney's not having it. There's no way. She knows better. There's never just one. And I do love the one piece I really love about this whole scene is when Sydney's like, just wait here a minute, and she goes and walks to the crowd and has a scan of the crowd to see who all happens to be there, trying to get a glimpse of all of what's going on, knowing that the likelihood is that whoever Ghostface is watching over this stuff, because they're going to come back to the scene of the crime, and they happen to focus on that teacher from the school, and then of course on Ben again. It's like, who could it be? One of them? And I'm just like, it's so not one of them, because you're showing us them, so you've already told me that it's definitely not them. So, and the fact that it was somebody from the psychiatric ward, I'm just like, okay, now I'm really starting to suspect the guy who we're going to meet here very soon. So this is when Gail shows up. Sydney tells her that, she got a call from Stu Macher, and they question, like, could he be alive? And then they both get a call from Stu, and that makes them, they do accuse him, like, you're an AI SOB kind of thing. Okay, fine. From there, Stu basically is telling him that he's, the work isn't done, because they accuse him of having sent someone to do his dirty work for him. And he said, well, you did the same thing, Sydney, by bringing this old hag in. I think was the exact comment he makes against Gail. And so they decide they're going to help the police by going and searching the asylum to find out information on this patient. Before we talk about that scene, I'm curious to know what you thought of this whole sequence.
I love the sequence here from like packing and everything. I like first the connection from the attic to like the panic room and that whole hallway thing, because it reminded me a lot of Scream 2 at the same time, of like that scene of like that Gail has in that studio where she's running away from Ghostface. And it's one of those scenes that still gets me to this day, even when I've seen it so many times. So it reminded me a lot of that callback in that sort of way. I think it's also amazing to see Tatum's reaction to see in the room, because she was like, wait, you guys have built this together here without me knowing, because she didn't know about it until like Sydney brought her there. So like that part about them being in the like kind of like very tight space there fighting Ghostface reminded me of Scream 2. I like the review with Gail here and the twins. This is the part where a lot of people in the movie theater started clapping, seeing Gail and the twins come out the way they did. So when they killed Ghostface like this, I went, nah, this is not it. I was like, this is too easy. And I like that Sydney mentioned it. One thing that I also liked about this particular scene with Sydney and Gail is that Sydney says, oh, I'm sorry I wasn't there in New York. And I like the fact that they mentioned New York like it's something that just happened to Gail. And the fact that Sydney's like, I'm sorry I wasn't there to begin with, because they mentioned Sydney in passing in the movie, but they're like, oh, she wanted to be safe with Mark and her children. And I like the fact that she mentions that, and don't forget that New York just literally happened to them. I also like the fact that when I forgot to mention this earlier, when they talk about her kids, because she's like, oh, I have 3 kids, and it's like Tatum and the other 2 that are younger that are with Mark's mom. I like the fact because you can think about the twins being the 2s that we saw in the stroller before, and meaning that we never saw Tatum to begin with. So I feel like in the timeline it makes more sense.
Mhm.
that we haven't seen Tatum before, and that she was just walking the kids, and Tatum could have been in school if anything. For example, there's always an excuse as to why Tatum wasn't in that scene to begin with. Um, so I like the part here with Gail and Sydney reuniting the way they did. And like I said, this is the part where I like Mark too, like the way that he fought off everything. And it's like, I like how the cops searched the whole house, but they didn't search the attic this whole time. But I like the visual here of how Ghostface comes out from the attic. That was really cool too, to watch. Um, and yeah, I like the part here with the reveal and like the fact that Sadie and Gail reuniting as a whole. I feel like that was really well done in this particular scene. This is the part when we first see Gail kind of shaking a little bit, and Sydney's like asking her what happened. And I like how this it's one of the two scenes that we see Gail being vulnerable in a way, in the way that we see her. I don't want to say weak, but it's like a different side of Gail because where we see her as a strong kind of character. And this is the first time that we saw her be so different and open about her trauma from like not only Ghostface, but Lucy and Dewey as well. So I like that kind of part of her because we haven't seen anything like that before from Gail.
Yeah, and it's also there was a line that was used as a bit of an homage, I thought, to a line that Dewey uses in Scream 2 when he's talking to Randy, and Randy goes, what's with the limped hand? He goes, because weren't you stabbed
Oh.
in the back? And he goes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
severed nerve. And when Sydney brings it up with Gail, she goes, what's with your hand? She goes, oh, severed nerve or damage that I
Right.
received from the attack in New York or whatever. And that's when she tells her, she goes,
Mm-hmm.
you be glad you sat that one out. It was kind of brutal or
Yeah.
whatever. So, speaking on New York, it's sad that they didn't once mention the Carpenter sisters. I know all this controversy going around and everything like that. They could have
Mm-hmm.
at least had the twins or something mentioned to Sydney, or Sydney ask quickly,
Mm-hmm.
like, are Tara and Sam safe or whatever? And just like, yeah, they're safe in their, you know,
Mm-hmm.
hideaway or what, like what are they, the witness protection, wherever it is that they decided to go
Yeah.
kind of thing. Mention that they even exist, but like, they
Yeah.
really didn't. That was the comment made about Billy's love child kind of thing. And it was just like,
Yeah.
it did not work in that sense. It's like, you, I get it. You've removed them, or they've let, and they've,
Mm-hmm.
or in the case of Jenna, she left the entire movie itself. You didn't have to act like the characters didn't exist. I mean,
Yeah.
we as fans know they
Mm-hmm.
exist. Everybody else knows they exist. You could
Mm-hmm.
have at least mentioned something which would have given us hope
Yeah.
that maybe there was a redemption eventually, or that we could see one
Yeah.
or both return at some point. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so going on from there, we go to the asylum. That's when we meet the guy who just seems to have a lot of information that he's willing to give without police warrants. Although he does mention at one point, oh, for that information, you'll need a police warrant. He's given every piece of information for free up to this point, which I thought was kind
Mm-hmm.
of a little bit silly. Like they just walk in and it's like, we're wondering about this patient. Oh yeah, come with me. Let me just show you his room. That's his room.
Mm-hmm.
And oh yeah, and have you seen this guy? And they show the picture of this like AI version of Stu. It's like, oh yeah, that's John Doe. He came in here long before I worked here. In fact, it was sometime in the late 90s. And it's like, this is his room. And it's like nothing in there. And I'm like, okay. Like something tells me that John Doe there isn't exactly John Doe, and that whoever is behind it, this guy knows
Yeah.
exactly who's behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and that this guy's a
Yeah.
lying SOB at this point. And I'm like, this part became, and this is okay. Sorry, I've already spoiled it for people. This is the part of the movie where I'm like, yeah, 100%. This guy is so one of the Ghostface killers, and especially when you know that one of the patients was one of the Ghostface killers, and I'm like, and now we know whoever the other one is was also a patient potentially. And so, okay, here's our connection of the three Ghostface killers. One works there, two don't, I guess. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
find out a little bit. But yeah, I thought it was a little funny how quick information was just coughed up so easily in this
Mm-hmm.
scene. But at the same time, I was like, with the running time of this movie, it's like, where were you going to put it? Like, were we going to drag more out, or were we going to get to the next scene where we're going to see everybody die all in a row pretty much? So yeah, they chose to go with a really quick information scene, just like, here you go, here's your little blip, this is the information, all the information you need, good to go, move on, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So I thought,
Yeah.
it was only necessary because of the reveal at the end. That was
Mm-hmm.
the only reason that was put in.
Yeah, it's like I did find it fishy when the way he was just giving out information the way he did, but I also dismissed him because it just feels like again they didn't mention his name much or anything like that. And so I was like, it's just one of those people that's gonna die probably anyway later, so there's no point really. So that's why I never really even considered him. I forgot to mention this earlier too with when the Gail Sidney scene when they reunite. There's a guy from the news station that's Mark Consuelos. I thought he was gonna be there longer in the movie than what he did, so that's another thing for a big name like him. We only saw him in what, two, maybe three scenes before the movie was over, so that's another thing that was pretty interesting. Um, I did like here that we still had in this movie the Red Right Hand coming up, and it's so we only have four being the only movie without the song. So I'm giving props for including the song in there somewhere as they could. So I like seeing that part of it. But this one, yeah, just like the fact that he calls him a John Doe and the connection is like, yeah, it's somebody that came in here in the '90s, and I like the fact that he adds more of a seed of doubt in Sydney's mind already, because she was already looking at the coroner's report and asking about the morgue in Woodsboro, asking about Stu's death, and they're like, oh, apparently the person that did it passed away a few years ago, so we can even get the records, and the records are open, so we don't know if it's true or not. But I like the fact that Gil's like, we gotta find out a reason for this. There's no way it's Stu. I like how Gil's not giving up in that aspect of it, but we still have that. I like how we get the mindset from seeing that she still has that seed of doubt just because of everything that's happening here is piling up to so many things with Stu being alive, most likely.
Yeah, everything to try to prove that he is still around, kind of thing. So from here, this is when we get to the point where Tatum decides she's going to defy her parents and she's going to go with the Meeks Martin twins with all her friends to a local pub where they're going to sit around and accuse one another of being Ghostface, because no better way to catch Ghostface than to get everybody in a room and point fingers back and forth so that we could have another Amber moment with people getting shot in the head. No, so then it was, I get the point of this. You had to establish something for these characters a little bit, but again, like you said, they hadn't really done a lot to introduce us to them. So here we get this scene where they're all kind of collectively together, and the only ones aside from Tatum that we've really had much time with, Tatum and Ben, we've had a bit of time with, and then the Meeks Martin twins. But then Lucas, I mean, we've had a little bit, and Chloe, we've had like pretty much nothing at this point in time. So it was like, okay, here we go. And then we get the Ghostface attacks, and Ghostface knocks off Chloe and knocks off Lucas, and the Meeks Martin twins get cut and stabbed again, because why not? That it's going to become their thing now in these movies. I swear, every single time they're going to have some sort of scene where they're at minimal get a little slash across the arm or something like that, because we just can't have a movie where they don't get bloodied up a little bit. So they get taken down, and this is what leads to the chase scene that so many people had talked about. We had seen it in the trailers where Tatum's running through the streets away from Ghostface. She ends up finally getting to a point where she bumps into Ben, and you could almost believe, oh my God, Ben happens to still be alive when everybody else is not so alive. And he's like, I'm not the killer. And it's like, yeah, we know already, buddy. We got you. We're on your side, but you're about to die in about 5 seconds from now. And sure enough, that's when Ghostface shows up, stabs him to death right in front of Tatum. She pushes Ghostface through a glass window, then runs off, ends up back at her mom's coffee shop, gets inside there. And that's when Sydney starts making the call. She can see the cameras. She can see Ghostface inside of there. She's telling Tatum that there's a gun inside the office, and she's going to teach her how to shoot it. I thought, again, back to the mother-daughter dynamic, the whole stuff with Sydney using the cameras and, you know, saying there's a gun there and teaching Tatum how to fight back finally. I thought that stuff was really cool. I really enjoyed that a lot. Then Ghostface getting in there, knowing the code or whatever. I'm like, you know, okay, I get it. This is a really tech-savvy Ghostface. They've clearly hacked some phones, which is why they know all these passwords and stuff like that. So I'll give that one. But of course, then Tatum shoots Ghostface through the wall at Sydney's command. But Sydney specifically said on more than one occasion, you got to shoot them in the head. And I'm just like, yeah, we know this already, but this is going to be not so good for Tatum. And of course, Ghostface gets back up. And then just as you think that Tatum's going to be able to run back out the front door away from Ghostface number one, oh, another Ghostface appears and she's been captured. So this sets up the whole Tatum has been captured. Sydney gets a call saying that, and like we heard in the trailer, I'm not going to hurt your daughter until you're here to see it, which is setting up the whole draw Sydney out, draw her back. And Ghostface makes the line of, I'm gonna get you where the heart is. Come alone is the word said, so you know, okay, home is where the heart is. She's got to come back to her house. and we'll talk about that in a moment. But everything I just mentioned, I want to get your thoughts on this part.
I did want to include two other parts too here because we have a part with Marcus going into construction. I think it's the garage that
Oh
they have
shoot!
a
Yes,
construction
yes,
in.
I rushed that. Yes, sorry.
So I think that part was really interesting too because this, I believe, it's the second scene now where we see Ghostface, like the little mask almost glowing in the dark, the way I mentioned earlier in the opening scene. So we see a little bit of that glimpse here too. So I thought it was really cool that we continue on to get that same thing from Ghostface here. It's the part that I thought, oh, Mark is done because we have seen this part in the trailer, and I thought, oh, they just he got asphyxiated and they stabbed him, and that's it, he's done. So I wrote him off as like a person that's not coming back in the movie afterwards. So I was a little bit upset, thinking, oh, this goes Sydney's back up. So I was a little upset about that part when it first happened. I was like, really, there's a Ghostface around, and you're gonna go to your garage that's in construction with nobody else around? Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I think that was really interesting. This is when we get the curfew happening. I did like when the curfew happens that when they go to the tavern here because it's kind of like almost like the party scene because there's no party scene in the town because of the curfew. Then this is the moment that it's kind of like the same scene for them. I like having here with uh oh my god, with Mindy doing her little monologue of like, who is it, and like going back and forth with Chad, and everybody's like, oh, it's the boyfriend, and it's like, no, it's the friend. It's like, oh, and you, Lucas, you're obsessed with the like the stab stuff and Sydney's life. And this is the part that I'm starting to suspect Lucas a little bit because he's wearing plaid, and this is something that we it calls back to other Scream movies. And at one point, the friend Chloe is fighting Ghostface, and then she finds him. He goes, "I got it, I got it." And then another few seconds later, he comes up stabbed. So when he did, I was like, the way he got stabbed, I was like, he's gonna come back later and show up in the reveal. That's what my thought process was for him before everything happened. I like the Chloe scene how she died because he just died not even of a stab wound. It was like glass to her, like the side of her throat, so she barely died from like not even a Ghostface thing. It was the fact that they just threw her in there. Like you said, the part with Mindy and Chad, they almost felt like useless in this movie to me because the stabs were worse in 5 and 6 for them than this
Oh
one.
yeah.
And I feel like this took him out longer than the one in 5 and 6. So it made no sense for me in that aspect of it. Um, so it upset me more that this connected with the other part that I'm about to mention, that is Gail and Sydney here, because Sydney's like, I'll give you something you've been asking me 30 years for. I'm gonna give you an interview because I want this Stu guy to come out. I want to like target me because I want to see where he is because they haven't called me in a while. And they do the interview. It's at the studio with Mark Consuelos is as well. I like seeing him again because he's another big name, and like I said, we barely see him in the movie. And they do the whole interview thing. And this is the other part when we see Gail shaking a little bit here. And that's where she has the conversation with Sydney. She's like, oh, this trauma is like getting to me. It's like the whole thing with Dewey. And it's like, and this is the second part that I like the fact that we see a different side of Gail because she's more vulnerable here with Sydney. Sydney gets the phone call, which is what leads her to go after Tatum because then she's trying to call Tatum. I like the fact that she calls Tatum. Tatum denies the calls because she's the one that goes to see her in the coffee shop here. But she's hiding there, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna get your daughter. She's in the tavern because she's breaking curfew." And because Sydney doesn't know, she's calling Mark for backup, and Mark doesn't answer. And because she doesn't know any better that he got attacked. So I like the connection there too. Another thing is when Tatum's going in town running away because she's trying to find asylum somewhere because of the curfew, the whole town obviously being turned off. I like it. This reminded me a lot of Scream 2 when Sydney's in the like, and not Scream 3 when she's in the studio and she's yelling for Dewey, but there's nobody there because it's a studio. And she's like,
Mhm.
"This is Woodsboro," and there's nobody. That reminded me a lot of that particular scene there. There's another part here that Tatum is talking with Ben in the car, and he has his laptop open, which is the part that you're saying that they make him look guilty because he has the AI thing with Stu, and she like hits him with the laptop beforehand, and she knocks him out. And I'm like, again, it's like you're pointing too many fingers at the boyfriend. Just made me already like take him off my list as it was, and I like the fact that she keeps running. We get the whole Ghostface attacks, and then as with when Lucas though, I had him on my maybe list, and then all of a sudden, then Ghostface just literally picks him up, and the way that Ghostface picked him up, I was like, it has to be a guy that did this particular part because the way they picked him up and put him on the bar tab thing, and he basically spitting out the beer the way it was. I feel like that kill was the most creative one out of this whole movie, and I really enjoyed the way it looked. For me, also, when you mentioned about Tatum being in the coffee shop and that the Ghostface knew the passcode, that's when I thought, oh, I know who this is. It's not because they're tech savvy, it's because they know the establishment there. And that was my whole mindset. So when I saw that they knew the code, I was like, I know who this is. I got it. And I was like, I feel like I knew the connection from there. And I had the first one on my like maybe list because we barely seen them. And that's the thing that usually what they would do with some ghost is like they keep them in the background so we kind of keep them off like our list because they're just people that we barely see. So once I saw that part, I went, I know who this is. I did like the visual here with Tatum and Cindy, like you say, having that mother daughter connection. It's like I'll be able to get to you on time, but I'm gonna help you. And the back and forth with the cameras to try to help out Tatum to shoot the gun. So I think that was particularly like pretty cool the way you did it. I feel like that particular scene by the time she goes to the coffee shop and Tatum is basically at the house all tied up. It reminded me a lot of Scream 3 when Sydney's getting to the house already and we have Gil and Dewey tied up in the chairs like that by the time everything happens. So it's like it reminded me a lot of that particular scene there too.
Yeah, for sure it did. And this all leads to what would become our third actor, the reveal finally. Sydney gets to her house where Ghostface is said to come alone. She comes alone. There now is on the television a video that starts playing that says, welcome, Sid. We've been waiting for you. Particularly, we've been waiting for you. So now we know definitely there's more than one, even though we did know. But Stu comes back on the screen and he's doing his typical speech and he's talking about family. And then all of a sudden we see now an AI of Debbie Salt come on the screen and she's talking about family. And then we see Roman, the brother of Sydney, on the screen, and he's talking about family. And then Dewey comes on the screen, and he's talking about being a friend and how everybody who's a friend or family always dies because of you, Sid. And so you're thinking in your mind, family, okay, there's a family element to it. And then I think this is where a lot of people get disappointed because then we get to outside where Tatum is tied to a chair, just like Casey Becker's boyfriend was in the first one. And Ghostface has a knife to the throat, and all of a sudden Sydney comes out. Mark's not out there yet. No, they pull Mark out in a little bit. So at this point, they're just staring back at each other. Sydney puts down gun number one, as you know, it's Sydney fucking Prescott. She's not going to have just one gun. So puts down the gun. Then all of a sudden, an immediate unmasking, and it is Marco, the guy from the asylum that gave all the information. Not really to any surprise there for me at this point. And then he keeps going on about his partner, and he says, and now I'll bring you Stu Macher, and all of a sudden another Ghostface walks in, and the mask comes off, and it's Anna Camp, aka Jessica, and says, "Howdy, neighbor." And then we get the reason why Marco doesn't really have a necessarily reason why, other than he became very close to Carl and to Jessica while working at the asylum and wanted to do this. I guess this was an obsession for him. Or maybe he had a thing for Jessica. I don't know. They don't really establish much other there. Jessica, some people would have thought right away, oh, this is Stu's sister, but we don't get that. This is straight up. She was obsessed with Sidney Prescott. She was obsessed with the book Out of Darkness. This is what helped her get over her abusive relationship, or convinced her to kill her husband at the time and get away with it, which gave her a taste for blood, drew her to go to the insane asylum, get out, get closer to Sydney. And then she found she was disappointed with Sydney for not going to New York and not being the hero and not standing up against Ghostface. So therefore she wanted to draw her out and, you know, make something of her daughter, wanted to make her daughter the new, you know, Sidney Prescott of sort. And so that is the whole motive. I can see why people are disappointed. Why I'm not is because I don't need the same reveal all the time. I don't need it to be family every time. I don't need it to necessarily be a stab obsessed person at the same time. So I didn't mind that this was a little different. I didn't mind that this was a couple of full grown adults instead of teenagers as well too this time around. I thought that was an interesting take. I do get that there should have been a bit more depth. I think that Jessica's whole reveal, or her whole end scene here, her battle with Sydney and Tatum, could have been a little bit more fleshed out, because really all that happens is Mark, who has been stabbed 500 times, is laying on the ground still alive, just conveniently right in front of Tatum, and he so happens to have a blade that he cuts Tatum loose from, or at least gets her feet loose from. So just enough for them to get Tatum to kind of get out of the way, for Sydney to shoot Marco in the head, take him out completely with one shot, because, you know, no other Ghostface has ever been taken out so easily. Yeah, no other Ghostface has ever been taken out this easily before, but Marco goes down pretty almost easier than what Carl does earlier in this
Hmm.
film. Um,
Yeah.
so then the chase becomes on with Jessica, the back and forth fighting and everything like that, and inevitably Tatum and Sydney get to finish the job shooting Jessica in the head. um yeah, that's kind of the way it ends. We get the final scene of the movie where instead of Gail going and taking the opportunity to have the chance to report on all this, she wants to go with her friend to the hospital. She's going to drive Sydney and Tatum to go see Mark at the hospital. I thought that was a nice touch. She gives the mantle um to Chad and Mindy at this point. Chad as the camera operator and Mindy as the on-screen talent, now almost passing of a torch to the two of them, which I thought was a nice touch. I will discuss my thoughts on where I think this could go that we were discussing before we
Hmm.
hit record, but I want to
Yeah.
get your thoughts. As I know this is one that probably bothers you as much as it does others, but your
Yeah.
thoughts on the reveal in this final act.
Yeah, the review for me was one of those scenes like I was hoping it would happen the way it happened when Gail came out during the movie, like where we're like you could hear the gasp or the clapping or something like that, and it just felt underwhelming for me. Like you said, we have so many ties to family without the home. With this, what I was mentioning earlier, that when they burned down the Macher house, for example, and we talk about Sydney and like and Tatum's relationship here. So I was seeing so many family sides, and the way they do the AI thing with the past Ghostfaces, who are basically family to Sydney somehow. It's like, okay, so there's a tie to family here. And then my mindset was, why did Jessica and Marco pick Stu? And it's like, I feel like there's no reasoning for that, because they could have picked Billy if we wanted to. They could have picked any other Ghostface. So why did they pick Stu? And for me, I don't know if I missed it, but I just didn't see any connection between them. So that's just why I was hoping that Jessica would be Stu's sister somehow, to feel like, oh, I picked him because basically, out of everybody, he has the most possibility to be alive. And I could basically trick you into taking my phone calls by showing you Stu because you know him. So I was hoping for that kind of connection. Marco felt like still like random for me. And this is why for me, I was hoping it'll be Lucas and Jessica doing it, because Lucas being the one that he's so obsessed with Stab and Sydney's life and the documentaries and all that stuff. I feel like a mother son duo I think would have been interesting. So when I see that Lucas got killed and they mention it's like, oh, I like my son got killed during this whole process. Like, why would you kill your own son over this to make this whole particular part? It just made in that part it make not sense for me. I was hoping it would have some kind of connection again to family, because we have so many mentions of family throughout this whole movie, and it just like it felt like two like random people that we have seen in one and two scenes and one and one scene. So it's like if I were to look at this movie from an outsider's perspective, not knowing anything about Scream, I wouldn't have picked them as the ghost faces because we don't even see them. And it's just like that's the part that I didn't like at all. I like the part that Mark was still alive, that he was able to help out Tatum and Sydney here. Marco getting killed the way he did so easily. Just like for a Ghostface, this is the easiest Ghostface to be killed. So that was really interesting for me to watch. Like I said, I wish it would have done Jessica and Sydney a little bit more before Tatum got involved. But I like that it was both of them that really ended her. I did like the particular scene here because when they're shooting her, her face kind of almost like melts out, and you see how her face like falling down for the kill as it happens. So I thought that was pretty interesting kill at the end. I like having Gail giving away that spotlight, because something that we're not used to seeing with Gail, and just going with Tatum and Sydney here at the end. I the part that really Another part that took it down for me a little bit was that I'm so used to Gail being involved in the third act somehow, and I feel like it was disappointing because she was not involved in this. And I was like, I know that she was shaking when Sydney saw her and Sydney ran away from the TV station, but at the same time it feels weird for Gail to take a step back, but I'm guessing it's because not only the trauma and what she was going through in the mindset at that moment, but at the same time she knew where Sydney was going, because she told at the news station, Mark Consolo's character, she told him, it's like, hey, can you call the cops to the tavern? So she knew she was going at least to the tavern. So I was surprised that she didn't chase her and like she ended up coming up at the end, basically. I do feel bad for Mindy that she missed the reveal again for the third time. She's
Yeah.
always talking. She always does her monologue, that she always misses the reveals and everything. So I thought that was pretty funny how they come up on the end with the van, and I'm like, you guys missed everything again. It's like for the third time in a row. You guys don't learn anything. But I definitely would have liked if Gail would have been more involved at the end here. That's the part that I feel like I would have changed a little bit there too. I like the ending of her. It's like, hey, this is what I was trying to protect you from. I love having that mother daughter moment. They were in the stairs that they're talking. It's like, I named you Tatum because Tatum is somebody that was strong, and she was so outspoken, and like the way she describes Tatum is like, this is why I named you because I was hoping for all of her and those characteristics from her that I liked to be on you. um so that was pretty interesting, that having that one-on-one between each other here. And Sydney also apologized to Gil. She's like, I apologize because Tatum is not the last person that I trusted. I trust you, like I don't trust often, but I trust you. um and being a part of basically my family, and that like basically the roller coaster of a relationship that we have all these years, 30 years later. um so I like that part of it. I definitely would have liked it that, like we were mentioning this off screen before we started recording, it's like I definitely would have liked it they gave us as to a continuation to something that would happen on the next one. There's already rumors that the next one's going to start filming in the fall, most likely because the numbers are so strong. But I feel like you definitely would have giving us some sort of clue as to what was happening in the next one, to entice people to come, especially because of the way that people are reacting to it so far. So I think that will be interesting moving forward. Um, I think that's all I can think about right now. That I don't think I've missed anything else.
No.
Yeah.
And this is where I think, like, again, there was certain things that were left there. There was the family element that was mentioned. There also
Mm-hmm.
was that scene at the beginning when the couple's coming up to the Macher house, where on the podcast you can hear one of the people talking say that Leslie Macher was seen at a house party at Windsor, or not at a house party, but at a sorority party at Windsor
Mm-hmm.
College during 1997 when the killing started to happen, almost accusing Leslie as being a potential third party
Mm-hmm.
in the Ghostface killings. And, you know, and it's being debated back and forth. No, that's not true. Yes, it's true. So there's almost all of these like little Easter egg hints throughout that make me
Mm-hmm.
believe that if the thought process when Kevin Williamson and Guy Busick kind of fleshed this whole thing out, you know, be it as it may, that they didn't exactly give us a whole lot in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
could be
Yeah.
that the bigger picture is that maybe Leslie Macher is
Mm-hmm.
around. Maybe Stu is a lot. Like, I, you know, again, there is a whole lot of story that could
Mm-hmm.
be fleshed out here still in another
Yeah.
movie. The only thing I fear is that with this being so critically panned, is it going to lose a lot of
Mm-hmm.
audience, and that they're not going to tell, like, we're going to get 8, but are they going to fail to tell the whole story, and we're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
situation like in 4 where they were going to start going on another path, and then that got halted after
Yeah.
4, and then again with
Mm-hmm.
6 where we thought we were going to get the 7th that came off that,
Mm-hmm.
and that got halted again. It's nice to plan out a trilogy if you know you're going to get there for sure.
Yeah.
And right now there is
Mm-hmm.
this question mark, because we don't know. We know right now money's coming in,
Mm-hmm.
great debut for the movie this weekend. We're getting 8, but will we get 9? Well, sure, we probably will, but are we going to get 9 in a
Mm-hmm.
capacity that we expect, where we're going to be seeing a theatrical release? Is it going to have the big names?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to afford the big names by the time they
Mm-hmm.
get to a 9th movie? It's yet to be seen, but here we are. I mean, I liked it. I liked it more than what
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people out there are. There's a lot of hate for this movie. I knew, again, as a
Mm-hmm.
Scream nerd, Scream fan, I was going to enjoy myself. There's going to be things I like. Yeah, there's things wrong with the movie. Granted, there's things wrong with a lot of horror movies, especially once they get to their 7th installment. How would I rank it? I rank it above 3, but I don't rank it above the rest. So my rankings would still go 2, 1, 4, 6, 5, 7, 3. That's how I would rank the Scream franchise.
Yeah, I think another thing that also I didn't like is like usually I'm used to Ghostface calling their victims before it happens to, and I feel we didn't get this. All the calls were towards Sydney, and she was the only like main target here. Everybody was just like, "Here, you're in the way. I'm gonna stab you. I'm gonna kill you here."
Yeah.
But that's another thing I forgot to mention. When we see the Ghostface that you mentioned here about the Ghostface knowing the code to the coffee shop, this is what made me think, oh, it's Jessica, because I had her on my maybe list already, being that she was already kind of weird with her demeanor. And at one point, her and Lucas are talking to Gail, and Gail keeps looking at Lucas. It's like she's like, "Don't look at my son that way." And I was like, "Yeah, it's not because they're looking at you; it's because they gotta look at you, not him." But once that Ghostface knew the password for the coffee shop, I went, "Oh, it's Jessica," because it almost looked like Jessica and Sydney were like co-owners of the coffee shop, so she would know the code to it. So that was my mindset of like, she's definitely one of them. And again, like I was saying, it's like, oh, this could be Sue's sister, that maybe a younger sister that Sydney doesn't know about. And it's something that I had mentioned with my younger sister. I went this whole time I call it the Billy timeline that we had so far, and we had barely any mention of Stu, and now I feel like we can actually flesh out a story with Stu, and this is the beginning of it, with him being with it being his sister, for example. So yeah, I feel like that's the reasoning why I was disappointed with the review, because we talked about family so much through the movie, and there's so many hints about family that you kind of expect the review somebody to be a family member. Um, for me, with the rankings, I feel like mine always change, but because my number one is always gonna be number one. For me, that nostalgia feeling of the first one is something that I can't really take away. uh, but it just like the other ones, it always, I feel like from here to the end, I feel like it always changes, because I have moments that I like two a lot too. I think with two is the nostalgia feeling that I love this particular scene is the Gail in the studio that I mentioned earlier when she's running away from Ghostface, and when Sydney and Hallie are getting out of the car, because it's two scenes that always get me no matter how many times I've seen them. Those are two particularly like top notch scenes for me. But then for me, five and six are between. I feel like I always kind of change them around. But I like six a little bit more than five. I like how the story was more fleshed out, and we have like I like the reasoning in six because it ties up to five. So I would say six and five, and then I would say four, and then I would say seven, and then three, probably for now. But like I said, might always change. So don't come at me, people.
Yeah, take that, Roman. You're still in last place. Um,
No, it's like
no,
it's
and
for three, just like the rewrites. I feel like it really affected it for me because I don't see it realistic that Roman was the only ghost face in that movie. It doesn't make sense timeline
no,
wise. I did like for me, what I liked about three is the review, how they say always say with the rules that it always goes back to the original, and we get it tied up like a full circle going back to Scream, and think about Maureen and how Billy and Stu were inspired by Roman and all that stuff. So I like that storytelling there, but I just don't like that it's one ghost when it doesn't make any sense to me that he worked by himself. There's no way.
no. And now,
Yeah.
obviously, we know that there was a plan for a second Ghostface in that movie, and you can really tell with the way it panned out.
Mm-hmm.
It did suffer from a lot of that, and I believe that they
Yeah.
even started filming while it was still being written and stuff too. So there's
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of mess that was Scream 3. So, but this
Yeah.
one, I say go check it out. Like people, like seriously, it's not as bad. If you're a fan of the series, you'll find something to like about it. I know there's some fans
Mm-hmm.
that are saying this is the only one they don't like in the series. I'm shocked to hear that when you have
Mm-hmm.
three in there. I still like three. Don't get me wrong. It's like when I rank these things and say three is my least favorite. It's for reasons. Like it's again. I still like three
Mm-hmm.
being my least favorite. I still like it better than the
Mm-hmm.
average film out there to begin with. So
Yeah.
it goes without saying. My biggest hate on this movie was the pointless cameos from Laurie Metcalf from I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the guy who plays Roman Bridger. I forget his name off the top of my head. And David Arquette.
Oh my god, where did I hear his name?
Their cameos felt so just
Oh, Scott
shoehorned
Foley. There
in.
you go.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yes,
Ugh.
it felt so shoehorned in, like so
Mm-hmm.
just like, hey, remember these people? And then
Yeah.
because of like the family mention, and then there are no family ties to
Mm-hmm.
begin with, it really made even
Yeah.
less sense. That it was kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, okay, you just had them there for the sake of like people going, oh,
Mm-hmm.
nostalgia, yay, I remember. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was so unnecessary. The Stu storyline, I
Mm-hmm.
was fine with in the end, despite all my
Mm-hmm.
pushing against Stu Macher's return
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. I actually didn't mind it. I thought that was handled decently,
Mm-hmm.
but you should have left
Yeah.
well enough alone with Matthew Lillard being back and not worried about having to get the other cameos,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't add anything
Mm-hmm.
extra to the movie. So overall, yeah, you know where we stand on this. Any last final
Mm-hmm.
thoughts?
Yes, I gave it like an 8 out of 10 because to me, the review, I would have liked it if it was more family tied after all the themes with family throughout the whole movie. I did find it lackluster with like the way they didn't have Gil towards the third act that we do most of the time. She's involved in there somehow. I definitely would have liked it if the twins were involved a little bit more throughout the movie because I feel like we see them there. I like that I'm hoping that we see them as a team with Tatum in the next movie because now Tatum doesn't have any friends. We've seen them before, but because I don't like that they were there just to say, oh, they returned, because you could have pulled them out of the movie, and I feel like it would have been fine at the same time, storyline wise, and would have made sense too. It just like they were barely there, so it was at the same time. I almost felt like no point of them being there the way they were added into the story. If that makes sense. So I would say that. I would say the particular scenes that I really enjoyed was them being in that really thin wall in the house from the panic room running away from Ghostface was one of the top notch ones for me. From like the attic all the way to that the girl reveal coming out the way she did with the twins. I think like that was pretty cool. And I feel like the other one that I like is like Sydney helping Gail the way she did, Gail helping Taylor the way she did into the coffee shop was another one overall that I really enjoyed. Um, I feel like I'm missing another one that I really thought it was really. Oh, the Lucas death, like I said in the bar tab, that was pretty cool. I feel like that was the coolest like death so far in this whole movie. That the way it got me just thinking about like the mother being like, I don't care, you can kill my son for the sake of the story, sort of thing. I was like, that was just crazy to think about because I don't think we had anything like that before. But yeah, definitely would have liked it if it was Lucas all along and had that mother duo. I think for the first time, I think would have been if I remember correctly, because that Billy didn't do it with his mom. So I feel like that tied to like the beginning would have been made more sense with the cameos that we got because they were basically family to Sydney. So that's like the reveal really took it down for me more than anything, and the lack of Gail at the end. And I feel like I would have liked to explore about Gail, more about Gail's trauma. So if they decide to start with 8, maybe explore that a little bit more. I feel like that will be something that I would like to see because it's something different from Gail's character.
100% agree with everything you just said there. So, but yeah, overall, it's a Scream movie. Go and check it out if you like Scream movies. Check it out. But Astrid, why don't you let people know where they can find you, what you got coming up?
Yeah, you can find me on Tuesdays on Taking Over with Ed. We're back on this Tuesday. Unfortunately, we had some circumstances with the storm and everything happen for Ed, so we wanted to make sure he was safe and that his family was all doing well with the storm before anything with the show because our obviously our lives come first before we do anything like this. I think we're talking about the C4 wrestling show that has it's a woman's show, so I don't have a lot of details. I have to go back to it to watch it. Aside from that, you can find my Twitter is Astrid Pizarro. My Instagram and Threads is Astrid Pizarro 20. If you're watching this on my channel, please, I would like if you subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when I upload or go live. Any support will be appreciated. Hit the like button. And not only on my channel, but all use your high points if you do for any of our videos. I think that would be really, really helpful for us to get pushed out. We're getting a little bit more of an audience, so we would like for that to continue. And we love that momentum that we have.
Yeah, I like it. I like when the momentum goes that direction.
Mhm.
It's perfect. As for myself,
Yeah.
Bob Munson, you can catch me every single Thursday night with Papa Smokes. We bring you Ring of Respect Radio, where we're either talking about indie wrestling or giving you a little bit of a history of professional wrestling. You can catch me on Saturdays again with Papa Smokes over at Prairie Pro Wrestling, where we're your commentary team for a brand new match from our vaults. And every Sunday, I'm joined by Andre C. and sometimes Ed Fries, where we give you a wrap up in the world of sports on Point of View. So check us out tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time to check out what happened in the week of sports before us. But yes, that's going to be it for us. We'll be back again soon, hopefully with more killer cuts. Because 2026 is pumping out a lot of horror. We love our horror, so we will be back soon. Take care and enjoy the